Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Lamed, number 30 in Nidrim, and we'll pick it up from the Mishnah right in the middle of the page where we left off yesterday. So here we're getting into a new idea. Back on Yud Ches, we said that when you make a neder that could have two interpretations, you know it's stam. We said when you said it's stam, and it could go either way. We go l'chumra. What does it mean l'chumra? Stam nidram l'hachma, meaning when you don't know what you meant. Either you said, let the rabbis interpret what I meant, or I'm not really sure what I meant. So you go l'chumra, stam nidram l'hachma. But if he says this is what I meant, then we go according to what he meant. That's one of the things. When we discussed, short nadarim, we didn't say the whole thing, or nadarim that really it's clear, the abar nadarim that we had at the beginning of the parak, that those things don't really mean anything because it's not libo shava, right? Dvarim shabalev is dvarim over there because it's very clear this is what he meant. Whether you're talking about the case of the purchaser and the seller, the 2 and the 4, they're just arguing. They don't really mean to swear. And the other cases about where you made a hyperbole, you said some exaggeration, etc. All those kinds of things that we had previously in this parak, but they're not even a netter. You don't even need a taras nadarim. Here we're going to talk about loshen b'nei adam. When a person says something, what does he mean? So, for example, in general, we mean that. And in the klal here, if you look on Lamed Amid Beis, we didn't even turn the page yet. Look at Lamed Amid Beis, the third of the last line on the page. It says, "Ubenadarim holach acher loshen b'nei adam." By nadarim we go loshen. When things could be interpreted in two ways, we're not talking about here where he didn't say it clearly, or the case of stam nadarim lahachmer, where we talk about where a person says, "I make a neder from nesach yayin," from libated wine. What does that mean? Does he mean, is he talking about karbonos, like yayin nesach that use in the base of mikdash? And if he says this is also to me like yayin nesach, that means that's a carbon, that's a valid neder. Or is he talking about avodah zarah? He's swearing by avodah zarah. That's something which is also. And if you say this is also to me like chazer or like avodah zarah, that's not a neder. A neder has to be a lashon where you made it also like a carbon. That's what we talked about before because it could go either way. So we say, well, if he doesn't know what he meant and he's not clear what he meant, he doesn't know, he's not sure. He says interpret it whatever the rabbis say, then we go l'chumra. If he explains what he meant, then you go l'kula. He says this is what I meant. Fine, that's what I meant. You go by that. What about when he said something lashon stam that can mean different things, but that maybe in lashon the Torah means one thing, and lashon that means something else? So here the Gemara says it's going to say it quotes the Gemara in Dapim test. Nadar machalash me'am. What do people mean when they say that? So let's take the first Mishnah. We're going to have a bunch of different cases over the next couple of days. I know everybody a man says, I don't want to have any hana from sailors. From sailors, I don't want to have any enough from sailors. Okay. He doesn't have any enough from sailors. What does it mean? He's allowed to have enough from people who don't sail normally. What do you mean by sailors? Doesn't mean a guy just goes out on the boat one day for a trip, right? We talk about sailors, regular sailors. I don't have any enough from sailors. I had a bad experience with them. He's allowed to have enough from people who are not sailors. What happens if he says miyoshvei abasha? He say, I don't have any enough from people who live on dry land. Then also he's not only also on people who are not sailors, but even sailors too, because sailors have to come to dry land too. They don't sail forever. They're also Yoshei Basha. People, sailors are also people who live on dry land. They might be on the road, might be on the high seas for 6 months, but eventually they come home. Nobody stays on the sea forever. When we talk about sailors, we don't mean those people who just go like on an inland route. They sail down from Akko to Yafo along our border, which is just a few hours trip, even by boat, even by sailboat. That's something we mean by that. We mean people who are real sailors. So is this last part coming on the ratio or on the sefer, and how do we interpret it? So let's see. The Gemara says, Ravika. 2 rabbis, Chad Masni Resha. Some say that this last lashon about we're not talking about the people who sail like on an inland route or next to the beach from Akko to Yafo. Is that going on the Resha? One says it's on the Sefer. Man the Tanya Resha. The one says it's going on the Resha. Masni. That's how he learns. If you make an edit, you're not going to have enough from sailors. You're allowed to have enough from people who are not sailors. But you can't have enough from people who are sailors. But veloke, when we say sailors, veloke we're not talking about people who go from Akko to Yafo, which is not really a sailors. those are just people, taking going down, even though they go on normally from Akko to Yafo. That's not sailors. When we mean sailors, we mean Dalein Yoshvei Abosha, and those are people who live on dry land. It's a short trip, it's a day trip, it's a few hours. They're commuters, right? They're commuters. They're instead of the train, right? They're commuters. El Misha Dark and Lush, we're talking about people who go out on the high seas. That's what we mean by that. So again, when he says so, according to this, it's more of a kula. The one says it's going on the Resha. When you say you can't have anah from sailors, you mean sailors on the high seas. But not only may you have anah from people who live on dry land, but even the people who like you say, are commuters, you can have anah from them because you meant the high seas. All right, so that's being mafarish at l'kula. But some say that this last business about the Akko de Yafo commuters, this is how he learns it. If you make an eder from those, you're not going to have enough from people who live on dry land, who dwell on dry land. Okay, you can't even have enough from Yadayam. Why? Because Yadayam also Yoshvei B'Shah. Everybody's Yoshvei Abasha. Yadayam means like people who go down to the sea, right? Sailors, seafarer people. But they're still Yoshvei Abasha. So Nidrim Yoshvei Abasha also be Yadayam. Below Be'elu, we don't just mean those people who go from Akiyafo Bavad, which are like Yoshvei Basha, Elafil Misha Darko Lafarish, even the people who go out on the high seas for long periods of time, but at the end they're going to come back to dry land. So when we say that when you went going on the tzad in the second case, when you say you're not going to have enough from Yoshvei Basha, which people live on dry land, that includes everybody. It includes seafaring people, sailors, and not just the people who travel, like commute from Akko to Yafo, or from Yafo to Akko, from Akko or from Akko to Yafo. We don't just mean that; we mean even people who travel on the high seas, because those people will also have to come back to dry land. So the Chassam Sofer asks, so when you make an eder like that, so who can you have enough? You're saying I'm not going to have enough from people who live on dry land, right? So be love and dry land means include everybody, not only people who are not sailors. So who can you have enough from? So who is it excluding? So he says that taka means like fish or that kind of people, like fish, things that live in the sea. I think that means you can't have enough money. All you can do is eat fish from now on. You can't have enough from anybody else unless you're maternetta. Fish and and therefore also, if that's the only ones you could have enough from, you're also forbidden from animals who live on dry land, because you're saying now Hochi Abasha, Yoshvei Abasha, the only ones that you're allowing are fish, right? Are fish. That means that the ones you are disallowing not only are people, but any live beings that live on dry land. Okay, so again here the Mefarshim deal with this question about how can you have Lashon B'nei Adam, right? Exactly. What is the Lashon B'nei Adam? So what's Lashon B'nei Adam? So here we're going to see not only here did we say this, because even here there's a different interpretation in the Mishnah. Rav Papa and Rav Acha are arguing about what's the according to Rav Papa, according to the first opinion, he's more makel. He just says that the Yardei Hayam, it means that too. It means that too. He says if you made it from Yardei Hayam, mutter b'Yoshvei Abasha, right? B'Yoshvei or b'Yam Aser. But not only these, right? Not only these kind, but according to the first interpretation, when he says you're usher to have enough from Yardei Hayam, it really means sailors. But people who are just commuters, like there, you could have enough from. That's a kula. According to the second opinion, we're talking about Nodar B'Yoshvei Abasha, usher Yardei Hayam, and all kinds of Yardei Hayam, not only commuters, but all kinds of Yardei Hayam, because everybody's got to come back. So that's more of inclusive. So here machlokes. Really what that means when you say or Nodar B'Yoshvei Abasha, right? And Nodar B'Yoshvei Abasha, according to this, includes everybody. According to the first interpretation, Nodar B'Yoshvei Abasha, it could be that maybe we only include the commuters and not the other ones. It's not hard to understand that, because B'Yoshvei Abasha also B'Yardei Hayam. Maybe Yardei Hayam, Shi'Yardei Hayam B'chlal Yoshvei Basha. Maybe he only means the commuters and not the seafarers. Not clear really what that means. The Ran says on the page B'chatoni Aseifa Ulachumra. Take a look at the Ran about 8 lines from the bottom of the page, 7 lines. Ulachumra Dafim Mishdak L'Farish B'chlal Yoshvei Basha. V'chein Nami Afilu Aholcha Be'Akul Yafo B'chlal Yardei Hayam. Middle appears media aration. In other words, the one who learns it on the Seifa, he'll say that it could be that the commuters are included in Yardei Hayam and they're also included in Yabasha. The Kaimon command must be a sefer l'chumra. You go l'chumra over here again. You can say stam no l'chumra. We're not sure, but the Mefarshim always ask, how do you have machlokas here, mitzias? We say, okay, we're going to go lashon b'nei adam, but what is lashon b'nei adam over here? Here, when we're talking about yoshvei abasha, so he said includes everybody, and according to Yardi Ayam, he says Yardi Ayam would be usher. Yardi Ayam be usher. When you say Yardi Ayam, it's usher. According to this interpretation, when you say Yardi Ayam, he only means the people who go out for go on long journeys. He doesn't mean the commuters. Those are Yoshvei Abasha. So Yardi Ayam does not include Yoshvei Abasha. So here's a machlokas already. How do you have machlokas here in Mitzias in terms of what the lashon is? Why don't you just go see what do people mean when they say that? So the answer is that you have to say one of two interpretations. Maybe the guy doesn't know what he meant, and he's asking the rabbis to decide what it is, and you go bust the rove. Or the general idea that the rabbis can say is that everybody, each rabbanim, there's no machlokas in our Mishnah, but the machlokas is in the Gemara. But we'll see machlokas in the Mishnah also. Everybody did what's lashon b'nei adam? Lashon b'nei adam means what is the lashon at that time, at that place, and in that language. What do people mean, right? People can mean different things according to the time. So each rabbi said, what was the lashon b'nei adam in his place? And lashon b'nei adam means something. It's not like, we didn't know what he meant. Lashon b'nei adam means something, but it might mean one thing in New York and it might mean something else in Paris. It depends on the way people speak and the locality and the time, as we'll see, and the time period, the locality, etc. So all that's included. So the Ran goes on to say over here, because we're Mustafa the Eino Osir, the Ran 5 lines from the bottom of the page, 6 lines. The Mustafa the Eino Osir b'chol mishior pamach. We're not talking about somebody who just traveled once. People Shamtari, that's probably what he meant also. Did he mean, I forbid myself from all people who go on the oceans? What did he mean? People who just took a trip? No, inami misha yoyor b'shas nidro me'akol yafo. Or maybe he was speaking about dafkit, something that El Misha Ragul Yer the Shamtad. There inam misha yoyor b'shas nidro. As he was going from when he made the netter from Akar Yafa, maybe he made the netter then. So it's not clear. Again, probably, you can see that also both ways. Rishalmi, let's say he makes a netter, and I forbid myself 30 days from now from all Yardei Ayam. Then during the 30 days, those people turned into Yoshei Abasha. They switched their job. They were a sailor before, they were let go. There were a lot of layoffs now, they were laid off, and they've turned Yoshei Abasha. You go according to the time of the netter. At the time that he made the netter, he was Yoshvei. He was Yardei Ayam, and it would be also Aslinan. Bahashta Yardei Ayam. Nenu O Basar Chalosa Netters. And do you go at the time after 30 days? He said it after 30 days. I want to be forbidden from having enough from sailors. So do you look at it right now? If a guy's a sailor right now, and then comes Aslinan, what happens if he went from being a sailor, he got a high-tech job in between? Well, he got fired from that too. He got some other job. He became a grocer during the 30 days. So now he's Yoshvei Abasha. Do you look at it when he made the netter? Do you look at it at the time the netter was chal? Yoshvei Abasha. The Ran says it depends this on a machlokes Rabbi Shmuel Mekiva. The plea of Perek Basim in our Gemara, where the Isha Shamra is, let's say a woman says, I want to be a Nazira after I get married to you. After I get married to you, we're having holy matrimony. Then I want to get married. Rabbi Shmuel said, and you go with the time of the netter, and the husband can break it. When is the netter? The husband can only break a netter while he's married to her, and the day that he heard about it, right? So do you go? Rabbi Kiva said, no. Basar Shas Amira. That's the time that she said it. She said, I want to be a Nazira, right? After I marry you. He can't break the arm that she made before they were married. He could only make the aram. But come can be all like a Bekiva. So you go according to Bekiva. Why? Because you look at what? You look at the time that they made the netter. The time she made the netter, that's when you look at it. The husband can't break it. Well, if you look at the time you break the netter, the time of the netter, in terms of the case we just said, this question that Yerushalmi raises, if he says, I want to be forbidden from all sailors 30 days from now, and the guy was a sailor at that time, so then it would be also to have an offer mouth. Even though 30 days came, he wasn't a sailor, but not the basar hashta azlinan. He says it's a whole discussion, and he doesn't come out the lift to ulachomer. You have to go to chomer in many of these cases. Okay, next Mishnah. We're not at days now. Hanoder, you see, we turned the page also. We're back to our Mishnah. Hanoder Rachamim. Let's say I don't want to have any anah from people who see the sun. So would you say that you can't have anah from that you could have anah from a blind person because he can't see the sun? No, also you can't have anah from blind people either. He really meant to say, when he says people who see the sun, he means that people that the sun sees. Why? Because if he meant at my time, the middle of Komer Min Aroan, why don't you just say from people who could see? I want to forbid myself from all people who have sight, That would exclude blind people, and blind people you could have enough from. But he didn't say that. He says the people who see the sun. So what do you exclude? That would exclude fish and unborn fetuses. They don't see, the sun can't see them, right? The sun doesn't see the fish, doesn't see them. So that's what he meant to exclude. So when you say, I don't have any enough from people who see the sun, it really means that the sun, that you're exposed to the sun. It doesn't mean you have to see the sun, it means they're exposed to the sun. Because if you just meant see the sun, you would have just said people who could see. Why'd you say see the sun? The fact you mentioned sun means that you were exposed to the sun as opposed to fish and fetuses that are not exposed to the sun.
These examples, and the calculation they ought to in terms of what they mean, what it means.
Right.
Who makes a netter like this? In other words, why don't we look at the person and say, wait a minute.
People who get angry a lot.
Yeah, but to say the sun. Now, what I'm saying is, why don't we look at the person and say,
Yeah, that's it. That's what people mean.
This isn't the
Yeah, today, maybe today, you wouldn't say that. I don't know. It depends on the Lashon B'nei maybe it's not. Yeah.
Normally.
Well, what would the people say if you brought? I mean, maybe would people make an edit that I don't have any enough from people. So you could say from people or from anybody exposed to the sun. You could make
a hospital. Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, it could be. People made Nadarim, and that's the question. The Gemara deals with all the weird cases also. Right. We would consider weird because what happens if a guy does that? What do you do in a case like that? What's the pshat? So you're right. What kind of people do that? Yeah, maybe they talk like that. Exactly. Maybe people listen. Here, in another case, I know the Mishchorei Rosh. You say you have enough from people, dark-haired people. Dark-haired people. What do you mean by that? So does he mean people who have dark hair? What about bald people? No, you still can't have enough from bald people or bali sevas and people who have white hair. Well, that applies to us, right? Why? Because when he said dark-haired people, he didn't mean to say black as opposed to red or opposed to white or as opposed to no hair at all, right? Because he meant to say men. And he's allowed to have anah from women and ktanim. Who's called Nashim? What's the reason? That's, in other words, again, that was at that place, at that time, in that lashon, that's what they meant. My time, middle of Komer Bali Seir. Why don't you just say from people who have hair? If you meant to exclude bald people, I only want to have enough from bald people. I don't want to have enough from people who have hair. He said Shchorei Rosh. Umutter benashim ubuktanim. We're allowed to have enough from women and children. Sheini Kron Shchorei Rosh al Nashim. My time, but why are they not called Shchorei Rosh? Men are called Shchorei Rosh because they're not called people who have their heads covered or bareheaded people. Women always cover their hair. In those days, even young women covered their hair. The Das Yudis was that even young women cover their hair, like in Anatefka. Women always covered their hair, and children always went bareheaded. So that's what they were called. If you meant to call children, you would say, oh, the bareheaded ones. If you meant to say women, you would have said the women, you would have said the women, the people who cover their hair. But men who sometimes cover their and sometimes didn't. In those days, only Rabbanim cover their, Chashuva people cover their, not like the minhag today. The Chassam Sofer says it's not just a minhag, it's a din, because that's what was accepted. It would be different than the goyim, whatever. But it's today, it's everybody goes with the men all cover their hair. So today you could say, maybe again today that Lashon maybe wouldn't work because today you referred to men, you would have said people who have yarmulkes or people who cover their heads. But in those days, the way to refer to men was Shchorei Rosh. He just meant people who were generally black-haired people. Why? Why wouldn't you refer to them as covered? Because they don't all cover their heads. Whereas women cover their heads, they would be called, cover people who have covered heads, and children would be called bareheaded people. Now we're going to come to another strange lashon. In the Torahs, we'll see we find when we say Ezo Achacham Aroas Anolad. What does that mean? Who's a chacham? A person who sees the future. But doesn't nolad mean he was already born? Who nolad etmol, right? So the lashon of nolad, what does that mean? Does nolad mean the future or the past? So we'll see it can mean both. In the Torah, we find that both yilod and both nolad can refer to the future or the past. So again, if a person who makes a neder, he says, I don't have any enough from people who are already born. I don't want anybody alive. I don't have enough of them. You could have enough from people who are born in the future, because as you made the neder today, 10 years from now, there were other people born. You could have enough from them. That's what the Tanna Kama says. Min hanoladim, but if you say min hanoladim, from people who are going to be born, again, where lashon of bnei adam is, at this point, we're saying that yilod means people born already. Nolad means like the future. If you say min hanoladim, from the people born in the future, that's also forbidden, meaning you can't have enough from the yilodim, the ones born already, because no ladim, even though in general it means the future, it can refer to the past too. So the Tanna Kama makes a difference. He says yilodim. If you say yilodim, ones born already, you could have enough ones who are yet to be born. If you said from the ones who are yet to be born, then you can't even have enough from the other ones. From the ones already born. Rav Meir matar afila. Rav Meir is mashma. He's matar even the ones who are already born. So the Gemara is going to say, what do you mean matar even the ones who are already born? And certainly the ones who are not yet born, min hanoladim. So who's usher? According to Meir, who's usher? We'll see. No, the Chacham say when you say min hanoladim, he means not only the ones in the, even though normally noladim means the future, he means yiladim also. Why the ones in the past? Because when he said noladim, he means people who are born as opposed to people who are hatched, not people. Animals which are hatched, they're not born. Born means born that the baby grows in the womb of the mother, as opposed to fish and birds, birds who lay eggs and they develop in the eggs. That's what he means to say when he said no ladim, according to the Tanna Kama. We'll see, as we get into the explanation now, whether the Chamomer is the same as the Tanna Kama, or usually the Gemara says the Chamomer Hainu Tanna Kama. The Gemara doesn't say that over here, because the assumption is, according to the most Mepharshim, that's Taka the Tanna Kama. If you say yilodim, yilodim means people who are born already. So you didn't want to include no ladim. But if you said no ladim, you mean to say even anyone who was born as opposed to hatch. So the Gemara first says, what does Rav Meir say? Rav Meir says when he said min no ladim, the second case, and the Chacham say min ladim, yirasar apiladim. Rav Meir says matar apiladim. So you master all of them. So Rav Meir v'lo boy no ladim. Rav Meir, the ones who are born already are mutter, and even the ones who are born in the future, v'lo boy no ladim. El manas, or who do you forbid yourself from? What was the neder on? So Chsur Master is missing. You have to see the Mishnah. Hanodim min yilodim mutter no ladim. Right, that's the first case. Everybody agrees with that. Min hanoladim asur af biladim. That's the second case where the Chacham say you say no ladim, the future ones, you include the past ones too, because he means to say again things that aren't hatched. For Meir Omer af hanodim min hanoladim, even if you make an edim min hanoladim, mutter biladim. Another thing why. Meir says if you say yilodim, he agrees. If you say yilodim, you're mutter bin noladim. If you say min noladim, you're mutter on the yilodim. He disagrees with the Tanna Kama. Just like the first case, if you make a letter, you forbid yourself from people already born, you're allowed to have enough from the noladim. The same way, if you make a letter forbidding yourself from the noladim who are going to be born, then you're allowed to have enough from the yilodim. Rav Meir says it's hadadi, it works that way. Whereas the Tanna Kama says no. Tanna Kama says anodim mina yilodim mutter b'noladim. Yilodim does not include noladim, but noladim could mean yilodim. Why can so it could very well be the Mepharshim say that according to the Chacham and the way Ron learns, the Chacham is really the Tanna Kama. The Rosh, others learned that no. The Chacham could argue on both sides. They could say no ladim, whether you said yilodim or whether you said no ladim, you're also on everybody. Why? Because yilodim and no ladim, we're not looking at the lashon of the Torah, which sometimes says yilodim is the future, sometimes says no ladim is the future, as we'll see. We're not going according to lashon Torah. We're going to way the adam, and person just meant to exclude things that are hatched. So it could be that the Chachamim Omrim disagrees with the Tanakama, in which case there's three opinions. Yilodim mutar b'no lodim, says the Tanakama. No lodim includes yilodim. Rav Meir says no. Either one excludes the other. Yilodim excludes anodim, nodim excludes yilodim. The Chum say no. Whatever you say, yilodim and nodim, everything's usher, because all you meant to exclude, the only thing you're allowed to have enough from are things that have. So all you could do is eat poultry and have fish, unless you get a Taras Nadar. Okay, so the Gemara now says, you're saying no ladim in the Mishnah. The Pashup Pshat is yilodim are born already. No ladim is in the future, like Ezel Chacham Harolos and is going to see the future. So they ask on that too. What do you mean? Doesn't no lad mean the past too? And if you know the past, a smart person who knows the past will see the future. All right, but the Gemara says know the Mesial the Nash was going to be born. Elamiata says Shnei Banacha Hanodim L'cha Be'eretz Mitzrayim Ephraim and Menashe. That's the past. So how can you say no lada means the future? The pasuk says means past. Hachanami disiyalm already. Does that also mean that that it's going to be born? They were already born. Velamai di yiladu mashma. Elamai no lada is mashma. What? That they were born already. Elamai says hinei ben no lad lebeis David Yoshio shmo. There will be a son born to the house of David, whose name is Yoshio. And like Rashi points out, even Menashe, his grandfather, wasn't yet born. So it's certainly talking about the future. So in one case you see Nolad means born already. In one case you see Nolad means the future. Hachanami the Have, you're going to say it's already, it was born, but Menashe, no, Rashi says it, the Gemara says it. Hachanami the Have, but Menashe, who was his grandfather of Yeshua Lobo, has not come. The answer is Nolad could be mashma both ways, and therefore, and as we'll say, what yilod means born already. What does it say? Kol haben hayilod hayora tashlichu. Right, Michael? Right. I mean, so it means it's going to be born. The Gemara doesn't give that case, right? The Gemara doesn't case, but you see that also in the pasuk. Kol haben yilod means the past. Yilodim also means the future. So it's mashmach mashmach uven adarm halachach lashon b'nei. Like I said at the beginning today, that adarm we go b'shel lashon b'nei adam. So what did people mean by that? In other words, you can't look at what the pasuk says. By Nadarim, we go according to what a person meant. Lashon b'nei adam. What does that exclude? Who lay eggs and they hatch. They're not developed in the womb of the mother. Take a look at the Ran here of Nadarim halachach lashon b'nei adam. Ubahacha pligi. Rav Meir Rabbanan. Rabbanan Sabri, this is how the Ran learns. The first way that there's only two opinions in the Mishnah. Rabbanan Sabri, Torah, in the Lashon of Torah, Kol Noladim Kfar Vasidin Livale, just like Noladim means both. Hachanam Lashon Bnei Adam. So very good. Even though we're not going by Lashon, we go by Lashon of Bnei Adam. But just like in the Torah, Nolad means both. Lashon Bnei Adam also means the behind the Hadri Rabbanan Lameimer B'Seifet Masisin Onaskam Zel Mishadar Kalei, meaning all people born yet or born already. Below das shlishi, it's not a third opinion like the other Rishonim say that it's a third opinion. El de prushik mafarshik tamayo. The you could say that also because otherwise the Gemara should say chacham hainu tanakama. The Gemara always says. The Gemara says two opinions. Then says the chacham omer. The Gemara always says the chacham hainu tanakama. So the Gemara says, as I explained, the Gemara doesn't say that over here. So here he tells you that the chacham omer is explaining their reasoning. The amri hanorim also b'chol. But every time the Messiah shalom niskaven el mishadarka livolet. Somebody who's going to be born, whether it's in the future or the past. The lashon of noda does not necessarily mean the future or does not mean the past. So therefore, it refers to everything. And just like in the Torah, we find that it can refer to the future or the past. Here too, the lashon is that way too. But Rav Meir said no. The lashon lo mikra noam el asid livolet. Rav Meir holds Lashon Bnei Adam. Again, this could be that it was Rav Meir's based on Rav Meir's locale at his time. No ladim people were only refers to the future. We ladim nami the tarvayu moda the mutar b'osin shasim lavale and yiladim meaning the past. Your mutar and the ones who are going to be born. Tamayim mishum Lashon Bnei Adam. Diva b'Lashon Torah ki echad mashma olam kfar ki rasif kol hayilodim b'midbar. There was born. Here the Ran gives you two cases of yilod, where one is the past and one is the future. Just like the Gemara gave us a case of nolad, where one is the past, one is the future. So,
who's making the narrative? Who's there to listen to?
Okay, whoever would be there. It doesn't have to be in front of Adam, but let's say he made the neder. Let's say he just made the neder himself, and now he says, "This is what I said."
Yeah. In front of somebody. Okay? and it's not clear, there's yellow, there's the future, the past.
Right.
And you just ask him, what do you mean?
Oh, very good. So that's what we said at the beginning, that we had before, that the Mishnah on Testament Bays, the Mishnah said that Stam Nadarim L'chumra, if he doesn't know what he meant, or he says, Rabbi, you interpret it, we go L'chumra. Right, we go L'chumra. It can go both ways. We go L'chumra. Is it a netter or is it not a netter? If we go L'chumra, we interpret it in the strict way. But instead of Pirushim L'heko, if he says this is what I meant, then we accept that. We accept that. So over here, though, the question is when he said the lashon and he doesn't know what he means. He doesn't know what he means. Like you say, like everybody says, if he's crazy enough to make a netter like this, sometimes you say something you don't even know what you mean. So he says, well, what do I mean? What do most people interpret that way? So again, the two ways to understand this is that the rabbis interpret it according to the locale. Rav Meir, like Ron just explained, according to the Rabbanan say that people speak the same way Lashon Torah. That no lad can mean both, just like the Torah. No can mean both. No can mean both in Lashon Bnei Adam also. Not Yilo. Yilo, even though in Lashon Torah, Yashna could go both ways. Yilo, not mean a lot of generally when people speak Yilo, they mean people born already. Again, that's Lashon Adam. Rav Meir says no. Lashon Bnei Adam says no lad is the future, Yilo is the past, and each one excludes the other. So the question is, what's Lashon Bnei Adam? But you're asking, let's say he says this is what I meant, then we'd be okay. He says we're talking about where he doesn't know what he meant, so he leaves it up for interpretation. So now the questions of interpretation, is it that the rabbis interpret it according to the way they understood it? Maybe there's no machlokas here. Rav Meir says, this is how we mean it in our city. When we say this, when we say soda in St. Louis, we mean Diet Coke. When you say soda in Israel, you mean seltzer, right? So, there's different interpretations according to the look. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's saying.
Where do you live?
Yeah.
You don't ever get people going over their
Yeah. No, he may not. He's not sure. It's either he's not sure, or he says, I don't know what I meant. I was angry at the time. I said something. I'm not really sure. Or he says, listen, whatever the rabbis say. That's what we had that before also when the guy doesn't know. Why don't you just ask him? You say, you say, netter, l'chumra. If he explains it, it's l'kula. Why don't you just ask him? I don't know. He doesn't know what he meant. Or he left it up to the rabbis to interpret. In these cases here, we're going to Hashem. You could say, on the one hand, you could say that everybody's giving their own interpretation based on their locale. What is it?
Doesn't know what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's a netter.
Right.
I mean, it should be a netter.
It's a netter. He meant to make a netter. He was angry and he made a netter. And I said, all these people are forbidden to me. Got angry, came in, all these people are forbidden. All the people with the kippahs are forbidden to me. I don't like the right-wing government. They're all crazy. They're all forbidden to me, right? People, if you've seen somebody who's that's a good netter. That's just a good netter. You see people are willing to do that, saying crazy things, right? I don't want all those people, Smutrich and all those guys, they're all crazy. I make a net. I don't want to, I will leave in the country, all kinds of crazy things are said. So the question is, what does he mean? So here, the question, the lashon here is, what do people mean when they say these weird things? People who are born, people who are black haired, people, as we'll see tomorrow, people who keep Shabbos. So what do you mean by people who keep Shabbos? A Kutam also keep Shabbos. All these things are mad. All the Shomer Shabbos. I don't want any of the Shomer Shabbos. So people make the Dharma, I guess. So what do they mean? So one way is to say, you look at the interpretation at that time, at that locale, in that language. Even I remember in Cleveland, they called that soda pop. In Chicago, they called it pop, and we called it soda. So, the lashon depends on the time. Or you could also say that when people don't know what they mean, the rabbis went according to the road, according to what most people mean. So it's not a shala just the mitzias of localities, but it's a question when they don't know what they mean, the rabbis have to interpret what do most people mean when they say that.
So what if you ask him? He says X, and that's not lashon b'nei.
Right. So that
What do you do then?
so if he generally pirush lahakol means if he says this is what I meant, we accept that.
Even though it's not lashon.
Even though it's not lashon b'nei. This is what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah, you could say that. All right, Chodesh Tov, we'll pick it up from here tomorrow.